We're coming in. All right. We are in.
We are in.
Welcome to everybody who's tuning in. At this point, it's typically our, I don't know if we've quite yet passed the million point. That would be possibly a
A
million.
million what? Is that? Do we weigh it like a Satoshi? We weigh a Satoshi value for a person value?
Something like that. Yes. I think that we will just say there's a really good chance that we have a million Satoshi worth of people watching right now.
That's probably true.
But hey, for a lot of people who are buying into BTC, they probably think a million's a lot of money.
Probably
a lot of money. I mean, you figure 100 million into 40,000. I mean, we're talking, they could be, I don't even know. I can't do math anymore that quick in my head, but they can be doing that. Okay, so anybody who's tuning in for the first time, welcome. Let's see here. I am getting a whole bunch of text messages, which is this weird thing where they come through, but I don't receive messages. So if you're trying to text right now, maybe leave a message out on Facebook or better yet, come through our Signal group. If you need, I'm available on WhatsApp. The text messages are seemingly not coming through properly.
I wonder if we're having audio issues. I will check on the audio issues while you open.
Let's check audio issues because that would be kind of important.
Yep, I'll check audio. You continue to open.
Well, okay, so you're going to check the audio issues. What are you going to do? You're going to go out and listen to it on Facebook. This is high-tech,
on YouTube.
high-quality content right here.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is what you call real-time, real live production and how it all gets done in this real-time world. So just stick with us as we work through a couple of these little things to make sure everybody who is trying to tune in is able to hear and those who are trying to connect are able to connect. And if you've tuned in the past, you know that this is nothing new. We're always trying to add a little something new each week as we take steps forward to ultimately connect all of this back to our platform and really be able to have all sorts of fun. But that'll be sometime later in 2022. So as we go, my name is Chuck Lavecchi, and the guy over there with his thumb up in the air is Tim Maslin. And I'm going to turn it over to Tim. What?
We're good to go. We have audio.
All right, we have audio. That's excellent.
Yes. It's always a good plus when you're doing video.
So tonight's theme is of hope. So tonight's theme is of hope and profit, and that's going to be a big part of our overall theme for the year, really. And we're still trying to hone in and exactly determine what 2022 is going to look like on Udicci.TV. We know that we're going to be using it to reach out to members in the BSV community. And did you get a confirmation for tonight?
No, he's probably not going to be able to join us because he's in the middle of some pretty pressing things. So,
okay. So each week we're trying to have at least one new person from the BSV community join us. Obviously, we'd like to get 2 or 3 other people kind of just lined up. We'd like to have 2 or 3 people get guests maybe each week lined up to share a little bit about what they're doing in the marketplace. And we'll get into just a minute while we're focusing on BSV. But the other side of that is we're really just looking to connect with people who are trying to create an environment of well-being in the marketplace. There is enough tearing down going on in the world right now, and at some point in time we're going to have to rebuild this whole thing, and there's no time like the present to begin rebuilding. So we'd like to connect with people who are trying to who are committed to bringing that well-being into the marketplace. So that's kind of tonight's theme, like I said, is of hope and profit. We at the 8 o'clock hour, for those who are still yet to be familiar with our format, right now what we do is we run in 3 segments, and the first segment begins at 7 o'clock. That's Unencrypted. On Unencrypted, we really just get into blockchain. We get into some theory. Just we kind of keep this very loose, but we keep it tech oriented and just friend oriented. People who we've worked with in the past, we want to have them connected. That's Unencrypted. At 8 o'clock, we kick in with Ceox, and that's really where we begin to focus on the well-being in the marketplace and really what it means to be, a cooperative team working well for the greater good. And then at 9 o'clock, we turn it over to Maverick, where things get a little bit more technical and a lot more musical. And we'll be talking about all of that throughout the night. As, like I said, we just began last week to really refine this kind of Thursday night social thing that we're doing. Tim and I have been hosting basically these live streamed events now for probably good. We started maybe about 7-8 years ago. We had a studio back in the day and took a few years off and really just kind of getting it rolling. But yeah, we're going to be kind of talking about a number of things tonight. On Unencrypted, we begin with art and utility. And since Tim and I have not had a time to talk about this, I'll have to kind of give a big background, not a big background, but a little bit of a background on that as we go. But before we jump into all of that, I want to see if we can add yet another technical, like, what is going on here to all of this. And I'm wondering if we could start a Twitter space. I'm wondering if I could actually go out and launch a Twitter space and see if people could maybe join over on Twitter. If they could hear me, I don't know if they could hear you. That would be one kind of a
that's probably where you're going to run into issues. You're running through OBS, right?
I'm running through OBS.
Yeah, right? You're going to probably run into issues trying to get that out. We'll have to play with audio.
That's what I'm trying to think. Like, so, like, I would basically have to have my speaker coming back in as an audio of some sort so that it would hear me and hear whoever else was talking.
Yeah. So you'd think that would be easy, right?
What's that?
You'd think that would be easy, right?
Nope, not at all. Not at all.
Just redirect that input straight in. So it don't quite work as easy as that. I wish it did, because otherwise we would have had video, the audio for videos playing very, very well, and for our intros and stuff.
Okay, so now that begins that, and now if I were to try to do a Twitter space, which just makes it all the more fun, which now I don't even know how to do a Twitter space on my thing, so I don't even know if I'm going to try to do this anymore. Okay, there's the tweet, 49 tweets.
We should probably be trying this stuff off stream.
I don't think so. I think this is such compelling content that, like, people are tuning in. Like, right now they're sitting on the edge of their seat going, are they going to be able to do it? Are they going to be okay? That's probably not.
Yeah, I doubt that.
All right. So what we try to do here is we're going to have about these 20-minute segments that don't exactly end up as 20-minute segments, because they're more like 17-minute segments. We don't have them all exactly timed out right now, but we do this little intro where we stop in, say hello, and talk about what we're doing tonight. And then we do a break for some unknown reason, but we do this break because these are sponsor breaks, and we see all the other cool people doing it, so we figure we may as well prepare for a sponsor break. So we're going to take a sponsor break, and when we come back, we're going to come back and talk about art and utility, and we're going to be really looking at this NFT craze from a little bit different angle, and, you know, maybe some of the reasons that what we're really dealing with here on blockchain is art and maybe not currencies.
Right. Well, hold on a minute, because you kind of you caught me. The only thing I had up there was the holiday part due. So we're just gonna go to a really easy where's the thing there? Okay, ready? We're gonna go to our break screen. We'll be back. We're back in.
Oh no! It looks like it's possible that I don't know that Twitter Spaces you have to have like a certain number of people. I don't know. This is just like
Oh,
so challenging. All right, so let's talk NFT and art and utility. And I thought this was interesting. I tuned into a Twitter Space yesterday, and they were talking about NFTs as arts, but the conversation more so seemed to rotate around what really justifies a security, which just made it a very interesting conversation because the idea that they kept coming back to is if you understand that you're really just selling art, then we're not selling securities. However,
right.
by definition, like let's say an SEC type definition here, um, arguably, art could be a security. Art bundled could be a security, depending on how it's traded. So there's an interesting thing that's going on here. But nonetheless, reasons that we start to look at it as art is because art, it's almost a new form of art. It's actually more like utilitarian art. And if we can begin to look at ourselves as artists of utility, technological utility, then we actually are going to be doing things like bringing more freedom and expression to our economy than simply assets kind of to be traded. But these are certainly assets that we appreciate in ways that we may not necessarily appreciate even some of our stocks and bonds. And kind of where that was going from is, so many people are aware of what it means to buy a stock or a bond or a mutual fund or, and maybe in their retirement accounts they have that, but we don't think too much about that. We put money in and we have this equity and we hope that it grows in value. Yay. What are we hoping it grows in value for? Probably retirement, right? Because we want more money. But in the end, the money itself, as we talked numerous times, the money itself is really of little value. The money is just a measure of the exchange for some sort of perception or experiential or utilitarian value. It's just that money itself is sort of just this thing that we need as a tool, but it's really what it is that money is being developed for. Anyways, take that a step back is that the NFTs as art, the first thing that happens as an NFT as art is that it somehow speaks to people. Now, for many people right now, those NFTs are starting to feel like I'm going to buy a new token and I'm going to go out and buy a new whatever, and it's going to, increase in value. And fair enough. Like if you could buy the Mona Lisa, right, is that right now NFTs are sort of the poor man's access to the art that they can't otherwise access. I don't know how else to say it, but basically it's accessible, it's affordable. We're able to enter into the art market in ways that we haven't been able to before. And, we've talked about this on past occasions where the art itself is now an asset that we can hold on to. But I think it has to become much, much more than that. And that's where this conversation got fun yesterday, was more along the idea of art and utility. In that the way that we look at art has always sort of evolved, right? Whether we first began as cave people drawing and, painting by our fingers or finger painting on the, hold on, I got to see if I've got some more text coming in here. I'm trying to figure out. Okay. What do you mean you love the... Oh, right. Yeah. So what's up there in the background? That was the mural that I printed. Yeah, I do think that's a cool thing. Now I got to find out where you are so I can kind of see what you're seeing. Okay. So now
it's Nereda's painting.
Yeah, that's got to be what you're kind of casting. Yeah. Okay, that's what that was. All right. So, anyways, the art and utility, right? We went to from finger painting on cave walls to paint brushes with color that was made through grinding up powders in nature, and then we had this like purple dye which became royalty. I mean, for years and years and years, art has sort of added to fashionable utility, and this is kind of this interesting idea that you know art has always been evolving, and then it became production. And we look at the cinematic arts now in Hollywood, and then we have art behind all of this, and now we get into things like the metaverse. But art as a whole, it was interesting as I was hearing this thing last night, is if we begin to look at art really like books, right, as stories, and NFTs not as simple characters that you're buying, but as pages in a book. And when you sort of read something that you like, and you're like, oh, that's interesting, I kind of get where that's going, you could buy that NFT as a piece of art, and you would have some rights to it, like you could reprint it. So, think about people way back in the day. We had this retail store called Successories, and you could put pictures up on the wall about achieving your goal and how healthy habits make for a healthy life, like these positive messaging. And those were quotes and things that were owned by different people who were paid royalty rights when their quote was used next to some picture of a golf course and a hole-in-one, and all of that. There was royalty paid through Successories, going back to the day. And there's been those types of books forever and a day. And then we've gotten into interactive books over the years, but this is where it begins to get really fun, because art on the blockchain is a whole new story, in that we can begin to set something up where we tell a story, and the only way that you can read the next part of the story is to first own the art, the cover art, if you will, whatever it is,
or a certain number of pieces of art from that collection.
Right. It's like the more pieces you have, the more access you're given to other pages that already exist, and you may not have to buy those other pages, or those other pages may also be available for your purchase as an asset, right? So just like owning the Mona Lisa, as you kind of read through these stories and you're able to kind of purchase them. Now, another fun part about this, though, is our ability, and we've been talking about this, is to kind of allow this art to have its properties change over time. So again, what we could do is say, once you own a piece of this art in this story, you're able to buy other art, right? But only for a certain period of time. Or after a certain period of time, other people could buy this art, right? So we can start to localize these things. And art itself is taking on a whole new, right? Art is becoming logic. Art is becoming technology. Like our actual frame, our canvas, if you will, is only so far as what could be artistically expressed through UI. I mean, I need to kind of better say that in some other way. But it was definitely a very interesting conversation, that the reason that the NFTs, that they were sort of, they were making that argument for, that the reason NFTs are so big right now has nothing at all to do with the pictures that you see being purchased.
Right.
And all to do that it's the first types of art being produced on a new medium.
Yeah, it's a new version of digital art.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that it then becomes more than digital art, as we were saying.
Oh, of course.
It actually, just like other art, it becomes this asset that becomes a tradable asset.
Yep.
And that's new. And the problem there is a whole bunch of people start to go, okay, then it's it's a stock, it's a security. And yeah, fair enough. At some point, it does become something like that. But that's kind of the weird world that we're in right now, is that all of that has to be kind of legislated. And they have to actually figure out, for years we've looked at taxing something this way or that way, and none of this falls under that necessarily, because this art, part of its artistic value is its ability to allow for immediate trade of value. And that immediate trade of value is literally that I could be, exchanging art for a haircut. I could be
Right.
exchanging art for, medical services, right? Because that
Yep.
art is holding a value inside of a currency. So it becomes like a currency, but it's actually just another expression of art. So in some ways, NFTs are like people are like, you get to design what your dollar bill looks like, or at least you get to buy skins for your dollar bill.
Not even the dollar bill, the asset. So
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So you're basically you're given an option. So if you think about like a painting or some sort of an asset that you have, there's only so many things you can do it. You can display it, you can lock it up and secure it, you can put it down in the basement or in the attic, or you can trade it, you can sell it. So there's limited things. But with a digital asset using smart contracts, you could actually start to give that a little bit more life. So you could actually, you could keep it as simple as it's just an asset that I'm holding, or you could actually make it like just as an example, something that I was thinking about earlier, a hot potato type of scenario where you have to hold it for a certain amount of time, but you can only hold it up to a certain amount of time. So you have to hold it for a minimum amount of time up to a certain amount of time, and then you have to get rid of it in that time. Otherwise, it devalues or something happens, and there's so many different things you can do with it that you can make it live and breathe at that point, where you can actually have it start to turn into like you're devaluing it if you don't get rid of it fast enough. But yet, if you hold it too long, it devalues. So,
and this is part of the an important piece. So part of our journey through 2022 is going to be looking at key components of Bitcoin and different blockchain things. And we've been doing this in the past. We're just going to begin putting them into topics so people can come through and watch some of this content as it's related to specific topics. So in this instance, I would say this brings us all the way back to sort of game theory. And what's really interesting about art, right, and is that digital arts are really built, I don't want to say the digital arts are built on game theory, but a major portion of all of this is art as a game.
right.
And it's not art that like it's, we're not trying to say it's Picasso. We're not trying to say these are masterpieces. Instead, what we're saying is that these are human interaction arts. Right? These are like arts that you can create with one another. And when we're creating those kind of artistic things together, we get to start to learn a lot about each other. Like, what is it we're really trying to accomplish as we create a game, right? Are we trying to create this artistic game that hopefully shares well-being and generally uplifting as many as possible? Or are we trying to simply secure our own financial future in some sort of treasure chest so that I'm okay and maybe my grandchildren are okay, but I'm not worried about my neighbor? Mm-hmm. And that's a tough conversation to get into, but it's interesting as you take those conversations through art and allow for vast expression, you can start to see sort of the heart and the intent behind something a little bit more. And one of the things that I would say to some people who might be listening is be really aware of the intent and the motivations behind a lot of the projects that you're hearing about right now. And even allow yourself to be challenged in your own motives, right? Mm-hmm. Like, why is it you're participating in what you're participating in? Is it solely to see, your dollar, your bag of dollar bills get fatter? Well, okay, that's not a problem. We all need that. But is there something more? And if there's not something more, then you have to begin to ask, like, so what are we doing? We're just storing value. What are we storing value for? If we're not actually exchanging value, if we're not actually doing as much as we can to exchange something we think truly has value as we would have expressed it, like again, we have this artistic game, and it's our hope is that through this game we all can have a little bit of fun, maybe a little bit lighter spirit, lighten the hearts up, give our minds room to breathe. Like, is that expressed through the art that we're doing and living together, or are we more so about how, like you say, getting that bigger bag of money for us? And if it's about the bigger bag, fine. Just know that's fine. Uh, but that has pretty significant consequences as that game plays out. And that gets us into a little bit deeper part of talking about BTC versus BSV and how all of this comes together. Because in some ways, you can't say that BTC was really art. It was really just imitating what currently exists. And I think you could say that BSV is rather artistic in its approach to market, in that, generally speaking, you always need to be preparing for free transactions. And when you're having to prepare and when you're having to keep the cost of transacting as little as possible, then the greater value has to actually exist within the transaction. And that's a big difference when you're looking at these chains like like Ethereum having a $200 gas fee to simply move coins from one state to another state. And I understand that a lot of people don't necessarily get the computer idea, the tech idea of state, but literally, when we change state on something in a database, it currently costs us, zero point 0.1 pennies, right? It's like 1/10 of 1 penny to change the state of a record, if you will, in a database. So why would we think that spending $200 to do the same thing on Ethereum is anything that's any sort of elegance? Like, and if there's not some elegance to it, then there's something else. And if the utility is not competitive with our current utility, then what's the driving force and the motives behind that? And we start to see that same thing with BTC. And there's lots of questions behind all of that. But I don't want to get into too deep on that world as much as to begin talking about more so what are we going to be focusing on to really help people understand the differences, like the important distinctions. I think I wrote it up as the functions on Bitcoin that are important for people to understand, right?
Okay.
And which ones are those and why are they important to understand? So figure we'll take a quick break
All
and we'll
right.
come back and we'll talk about that, which is really setting up, hopefully, some clarity around Maverick and what we're going to be doing in there. So we've got some of those things going on tonight. And yeah, so let's take a break and we'll be right back.
And we're back.
All right. So before we go too far, that was a very wonky opening, I'm going to say. That whole thing on art and utility was very wonky. And I apologize to anybody who's listening. See, we're still trying to figure out our flow for the night. And Tim and I we have not been able to discuss these things beforehand. So that always creates this kind of what are you really trying to talk about? So just to set the stage, we're going to go through until 8 o'clock, at which time we'll talk, bring on Ceox. We're going to have a little game theory talk at that point, and we'll see who might join us and see if we can get a special update from Las Vegas. Maybe we'll see if that happens while the Consumer Electronics Show was last week, but maybe there's some people left out there gambling. Who knows? And then at 9, we're going to talk. Tim is really going to kind of take the charge, take the reins with Maverick, and I kind of want to get into some thoughts on what's going to be, the Maverick show. So I'm going to back up a little bit and go through, what we kind of think that we're trying to create here. I had this kind of ready to go earlier, and I just kind of want to read what I was saying here. It says Udicci is in the final stages of launch preparation. You're currently viewing the Udicci profile, so hopefully some people would see this if they saw that in there. That's not what I'm trying to say. Anyways, all right. Last week we decided that some of our 2022 objectives for Udicci.TV was to connect with the BSV community and those in the marketplace who seek and work to create an environment of well-being while sharing appreciation for community and that which flavors life. Okay, that all needs to be kind of shortened up. But in a nutshell, we're saying, look, we want to talk with people who work in BSV. We want to talk with people who are committed to really uplifting one another, encouraging one another, and helping us build a better future together. And, then we're also going to explore throughout all this time why we're choosing BSV. And we welcome people from other chains to come on and have honest, good technological conversations as to why you would choose one chain over another. We're really disinterested in having any sort of look at the market value. I'm not really interested in saying let me measure by the value that we think is broken, right? I mean, we think that the US dollar, the fiat dollar, is broken. Why do I want to actually measure against it? We need a new measure, and we need to begin looking at the utility measures and why we're choosing technology. So that's really kind of what I would like to talk about right now is, and this is where kind of going to put Tim in the spotlight here is, what utility is important when considering technology solutions. What is it you want to look for if you're out, evaluating a new operating system, if you're evaluating a new piece of technology to build on, to deliver greater value to your customers, what is it you're going to be looking for when you're doing that evaluation?
So, and when you're, depending on what you're looking for, OS or blockchain or, we'll go with blockchain since that's what we're kind of talking about right now. There's a lot of factors that come into play. You'll hear words thrown around like scale. Is it scalable? Which means can it grow as the more people that use it, the more information you're storing in it, et cetera, et cetera. Can that system grow and scale to a bigger size without impacting the performance or the user experience? Then there's other things like when you're looking at the features and the functionality that it's providing for you, is it going to give you the things that you need to be able to solve the problems that you're trying to solve? And more so, and I think
what problems would you think we're trying to solve right now in society and technology?
Oh, that's a loaded question. That's a what problems are we trying to solve? I think we're trying to solve for efficiencies. I think we're trying to solve for broken communication. I think we're trying to solve for more effective use of technology, and as 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 you watch, like I was watching a video on CES about the all the robots and how far. I mean, it's almost iRobot. How far these robots have come. They're smiling. They're it's really creepy when you see them and they respond to within when you get within range of their face, they'll respond and back up. So when you're talking about what problem you're trying to solve, it really comes down to in technology, there's 1,000 different problems we're trying to solve, and for blockchain, I think that there's 1,000 different solutions that can be provided. But again, when you're looking at the one of the big things is that you got to look at it. What are the limitations of the technology? So when you're looking at a blockchain, what is the limitation, and how can that limitation impact the particular problem that you're trying to solve?
So yesterday, I shared a tweet that I thought was really good. Hold on, let me see if I can find this one now. I don't want to take too much time looking for it. But in this article that I shared, they're talking about that in many ways, technology has currently reached the godlike status amongst humans. Yeah. And what we mean by that is, like, we talk about like our brain and our all this other stuff that like has been with us since, if you're evolutionist, like, way back in day one. We've got this really highly developed sensory nervous system that sort of sustains life, but a lot of that is still has been having to adapt to, let's say, technology that's occurring at breakneck pace over the last 100 years, and let's say in the last 10 years, at 20 years, we can't even comprehend yet what it's doing to us. So there's some who are out there talking about technology and looking at it not necessarily solely from the functional things that we're changing, but what is the social impact of having technology that is so advanced and so able to make drastic and dramatic change to the way humanity has interacted with one another for thousands and thousands of years. And in the next couple of decades, that's all going to change.
Yep.
And that's a significant, huge what's going to happen to humanity. And it can't be, this isn't hyperbole. This is reality. This is what we have to be.
It's already happening. We're already seeing it.
Yeah, it's like we have to be like really aware that this, whatever that thought was I had that I no longer has, was a thing that I didn't no longer need, neither. Don't.
Well, I apologize, but if you're trying to say is technology evil, are we really saying that?
No, I don't think it is. No, what was interesting, like the article that I read was really about the need to create or agree upon a global standard equivalent to the Second Amendment. All right, and who would actually be responsible for creating that, and how would you come into agreement with it? And what does it mean to be in agreement with it? And, sort of along the lines, if you are unwilling to agree to that Second Amendment, then that would be a property that you would recognize on your currency, and people could decide whether they would want to do business with you if you don't kind of support, if your chain, your currency doesn't sort of say, yes, we agree to the global Second Amendment, then I don't necessarily want to do business with you. Because what's an interesting thing that's going on here is that we're in many ways approaching the endability of politics, and if we don't have a Second Amendment guaranteed through technology, and it takes a bit to process through this. But essentially, if we cannot freely express ourselves through code and language online, then whoever has ultimate say over the language and the code development for technology effectively becomes a demagogue, or like a priest of their own economic religion. And it's
Yeah.
a very like it takes a bit to get there, but like, when I was reading this article, you're like, we need to really get serious about where we are right now, because that's exactly what it begins to look like as you look across the landscape of cryptocurrencies, is a bunch of like multi-billionaire cyborg overlord wannabe archpriest for like type people. They're literally
Yeah.
creating these environments in which ultimate control relies in the hands of a select few technologists. And
Yeah.
that's a really interesting
Yeah.
thing. And one of the ways you can immediately begin to guard against that is by having a global Second Amendment idea.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think the mediation of agreements and information, like the mediation of agreements that we have set up in the platform, not to go too far off on the Udicci, but the way we've set up our system is in such a way that each individual kind of, they work together to determine how that arrangement's going to work. So yeah, you don't really have one person kind of overlording it, or one technology or something like that overlording it, but you have it's a meeting of the minds more.
So what I'm going to actually put here, community mining, and we'll talk about that probably during Maverick a little bit, because that idea of mediation, we do have to start to think through that, is that we need to have the ability for people to express however they would like to express, and the exchange of ideas to be welcome across economies. And economies can choose if they want to participate with one another based on these different kind of criteria. um, and we need to take this all the way back to the community level. It's all about the miners, and we really need to help. We need to better, Tim and the world, 99.9% of the world right now has no concept of what it means to mine a proof of work blockchain. And there is sufficient evidence, I mean, bordering on overwhelming evidence, that we will be reliant upon proof of work blockchains, which require miners. Now, the interesting way that mining gets, the cost gets brought down, and there's a lot that goes into this, is because we will eventually have mining facilities, sort of like local credit unions. You would have local nonprofit mining facilities that would handle transactions in your current in your community, and you could have this all go to a coin where you have common agreement about how things are going to be traded. So I could create a coin for the town that I live in, another town could create one, right? And they all just sort of end up reconciling or balancing back to like a BSV Bitcoin ledger. But you will have actual I heard somebody call Bitcoin, and I intentionally keep calling it Bitcoin because the people that follow it deep call it Bitcoin, but we're not referring to BSV. I'm sorry, we're not referring to BTC. We're referring to BSV when we say Bitcoin, because it does seem to be the most true application of it. And somebody referred to Bitcoin as a philanthropic form of economics. And it took me a bit to kind of walk through that, but that's exactly what this is, because you're literally putting the monetary policy agreements in the hands of the community the currency holders in the community, because you've always voted with your dollar. So you'd be voting with your economic dollar based on who's helping your community have the best economic growth. And this is really scary to central bank type people. This is really scary because if you start to strengthen the local community, well, you start to weaken the centralized government. So it's important that we start to understand that this thing that they're pushing out, that mining is this great ecosystem catastrophe, not true. When you're talking about having hundreds of thousands of transactions in a block, being able to handle, those transactions at 20, 30,000 transactions a second, 50, whatever the number is, it's ridiculous volume that they're currently doing. In other words, we're already competing with well-established technology. We're already beating well-established technology. We're already driving the price down. And here is where the lie and the people get hooked on. We should live in deflationary economies. Now, what that means is that the prices should always be going down by the pressure given to the value of its currency, right? The value of the currency should be always going up, and the actual prices driven down. And why would the prices be driven down? Because technology is designed to be more efficient. So anything that could first be produced for X, once we apply technology and knowledge to it, it should always be worth X minus something, because of the efficiencies gained through the market and technology. Prices should go down. But we've been so distorted through fiat currency and debt that we actually have been taught that prices need to increase, and that's the lie. The lie is that prices do not need to that the currency price does not need to increase, that actually prices need to go down. We need to unlearn the broken economic system that people have told, so that we can begin to rebuild on much healthier technologies. So much stuff to learn. Tim has all the answers. So I'm going to just get back to his court for a second after I just said, okay, so
the effectiveness of miners. Yeah, the effectiveness of miners, actually, as you were talking about that, I was thinking about some of the videos I've been watching recently about the different mining facilities and how people are setting up these mining facilities with these little pods. And these little pods that they're creating are very effective and very efficient and don't take that much power. And they're running, you can create them in such a way that they have solar power that actually is creating enough energy for it, and giving enough energy off on top of it to be able to add back into the grid, the national grid.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. I mean, the technology itself feeds on it. We know all these things feed on themselves.
Yes.
And particularly the cost effectiveness of this computing platform versus, let's say, the cloud computing platforms of the world. That's what we need to be comparing it to, right? We need to be looking at the total volume of technological processing and economic value that is generated per terawatt hour. I don't know. But the important thing is, that's one of the things I really do want to get into, is what are the important measures? And I think that we need to be thinking about what are the important measures when evaluating these technologies. And I do think it needs to include some sort of thing like, I don't know, economic value per kilowatt hour. I don't know what that would even look like, how you'd go about bringing it together. I know that Brian is working on some stuff in that world, and we could certainly bring some more information to that. But if we can say anything to anybody listening, tuning in right now, begin now learning about Bitcoin mining, and look for some people in your community who are also doing it, and understand that this is likely going to be the best way that we can serve those communities that are currently underserved, who have been misserved for many, many years. And, we can begin to truly have a difference in the economies, in the neighborhoods that we live in. when we can actually understand the power that is currently being put into our hands.
Mm.
It's substantial. It's
Yeah.
substantial power.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I wanted to, I know we're time for break, but we're actually time for a cutover here in about 2 minutes. Um, so do you want to we can end unencrypted, go on a little short break, do the switch over, and then come back on Ceox?
Sure. Yeah, let's do that.
All right.
All right, we'll be back in like 5 minutes.
All right. Thanks, guys, for joining Unencrypted. Oh, my mouse stopped working. Uh-oh.